I'm your host, Carolyn Solo, LCSW, EMDR therapist, and mom of 3 daughters. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Future Template Parent Podcast. This is a momentous episode that I'm recording. It is episode 100 of the Future Template Parent Podcast. I kind of can't believe I'm saying that out loud. Who am I? Well, if you haven't listened to the show before, I'm Dr. Carolyn Solo, PhD, LCSW, EMDR Intensive therapist and consultant, mom of 3 daughters, and obviously the host of this podcast. And this is the 100th episode. It's pretty much exactly 2 years since the first episode of the Future Template Parent podcast came out. I believe it was May 31st. 2023 when the trailer dropped, and then a week later, June 7th, the first 3 episodes came out all at once. So yeah, 2 years, 100 episodes. I was sort of trying to think about what am I going to talk about for the 100th episode, and so I thought I would take a look back over the time that the podcast has been running, and even maybe a bit before, and process how my business, and then of course my life as a result, has changed during that time. So I thought I would dive into 5 life-changing career milestones as an EMDR intensive therapist, getting me from being an overworked and underpaid private practice therapist to where I am now, recording my 100th podcast episode, charging $6,000 for a 15-hour EMDR intensive, and coaching therapists to do the same, coaching them in both group and individual programs. So milestone number 1 that sort of changed the trajectory of my career, and this happened before I started the podcast, but certainly led to the podcast, and that's getting EMDR trained, and then within a year or so, making the switch to intensives, right? So, or maybe 2 years, yeah. So I finished my EMDR training in 2020 during the pandemic. So, big chunk of that was virtual EMDR training, which so many of us had never thought about offering virtual therapy until we had to. And then there I was learning how to do BLS and do trauma therapy over a computer screen. But that's when I finished my training. And I first got exposed to intensives. I think it was by the person who did who's my consultant for my basic training, like ran the groups where I had to do, my consultation between phases 1 and 2 of my training. You have 10 hours as part of the basic training. I also ended up using her as my consultant for certification as well. And she did intensives, and she was starting to talk about, people in the group would ask her about it. She was talking about how she did them over the weekend, and she did 3 days, and these were the life-changing transformations she saw. She also was someone who really helped me a lot in developing my skills with working with complex trauma clients and dissociative disorders. And so I was also really intrigued by the fact that she was working in an intensive format with those clients too. So I was getting really excited about all of that. So I started taking programs and courses that I could take on intensives. I took a virtual course offered by Scaling Up. They have a virtual intensives course. I took a virtual, self-guided course with Zero Disturbance, Cambria Evans. And then I actually ended up doing a live coaching kind of container with both of those programs as well. With Scaling Up, they had a weekend basically in Vegas where I went and hung out with, there were 10 of us EMDR therapists learning to run intensives in our practice over a 3-day weekend. That was awesome. I'm actually wearing, you can't see it if you're not watching this on YouTube, but I'm wearing the Las Vegas sweatshirt I got when I was on that trip. And then I also did this 9-month program with Zero Disturbance with Cambria Evans's group, where I got a lot of the hours towards becoming a consultant, but it was also very much focused on business building. And a lot of what we talked about was offering intensives. And I really found being surrounded by other people who were doing the same to be so important. What I did find frustrating about those programs was that they didn't talk very much about what to do during an intensive, how to be that excellent transformational EMDR therapist so you can feel really grounded in what you charge, because all those programs talked about, high fees as part of the package, that like there's an understanding that it is important to charge a really substantial fee for this incredibly transformational service. Great. I'm on board with that. And a lot of the time, there wasn't as much talk in those programs about money mindset. It was kind of like, you need to do this. Other people are doing this. You can charge a lot for it, but not necessarily really going in depth into like, now let's do that work together, which is one of the things I focus on in my group coaching program, is that let's do this together. So you're actually getting to that place with the support of a group to charge that fee and feel good about it. So that was one thing. And then also, I didn't feel like enough of the clinical skills were being taught to deliver on that transformational intensive. Sometimes like in those programs, they'd say, oh, well, I went to a training on X and that really helped me. But there wasn't necessarily like them like, okay, let's talk about how you do that. It was just like, that's what I've done. I also thought that some of those programs didn't really give you the real deal on how much you actually needed to be marketing these. There was like, I feel like the programs that I did, the people who both in Scaling Up and Zero Disturbance started doing intensives kind of early on in the like intensives wave that I feel like has been working its way through our field, which I think is good. There's a lot of energy around intensives, but people that were very much early adopters were kind of like, just put it up on your website and people will come to you. Maybe that was true for them, although I kind of feel like there's probably more to it than just that. But I don't think it's true now. I think there's competition, there's consumers who are educated, and people understandably care about their finances and how much they're spending. And so they're going to be deliberate about how they decide to invest in this. So the marketing matters, and it matters that you need to have a plan, not just like, oh, you should market. Here are a couple ways you can market. Like, let's have a plan. So again, that's a big part of this, my group coaching program, which is starting on June 2nd. You can still enroll. Link is in the show notes. You get a plan, and there's accountability and implementation. It's not just like, here's your plan, go. Over the course of the 12 weeks, we come up with your plan, and we're constantly working on it as a group together. Everyone's working on their plan. Everyone's holding everyone else accountable. The other thing I feel like those trainings and helped me realize was, I realized what trainings and areas I wanted to continue to niche down in and focus on, right? For me, a lot of it was around dissociation, complex trauma. I was realizing what I felt like I needed to know to continue to grow as an intensives therapist. So that's kind of that first milestone, is like getting towards wanting to do intensives, learning more about them, and seeing what the gaps I thought in the education was. Milestone 2 was really, really honing in on that money mindset stuff, like really getting to the place where I was confidently, as I am now, charging $6,000 for an intensive and having that be my primary offering in my practice. My intensive journey, I would say, in terms of pricing, was basically from, I think when I was working on re-recording some content for the group program, for this round, I was kind of doing some math, and like the first real like intensive, multi-day intensive I did was 3 days, 3 hours at a time. So 9 hours total. And then there was also like a 90-minute intake session as well. So I guess that's 10 and a half hours. And I did the math, and basically that was like about $2,000 that I was charging for that, which still felt like a hell of a lot at the time. But now 15 hours, $6,000, obviously a lot of shifting of my mindset, of my understanding of the worth and the value of what I'm offering. That was a huge shift. And I think some of the crucial pieces there, one of maybe the most crucial piece, was surrounding myself with other therapists who were doing the same thing. And that included working with a coach who very much has supported me in this process of, charging a fee that I feel really good about in terms of what I'm making and what it allows me to do as a clinician. And being with other therapists who believe in that as well, and who we all cheer each other on as we're doing that. Like I said, some of those groups that I was in that I was talking about in, just now through zero disturbance, through scaling up, that was connecting with those therapists who are supportive of high fees, are supportive of what we're all trying to do. That is such a valuable piece in the money mindset stuff, because you get to actually talk through those fears, say them aloud, say the scary things that you're worried about will happen, and get the support from others who are either going to say, hey, I've been through that, this is what I did, or let's try this and see what happens. They know that you're working on it. They're going to hold you accountable. That's one of the amazing things about my group program, the EMDR Intensive, 12-week intensive, is that you're in a group of, I like to call them business besties, but the group caps at 8 so that it's a really intimate container of highly skilled EMDR therapists who know how hard you're working because they're working that hard too, and who are all invested in each other's success, right? That is transformational for people who are involved in the program, is that group cohort approach. So I can't say enough good things about how much you can gain from working in a group like that, because for me, it's paid itself. Like the investments I've made in those group programs have paid themselves back many, many times over, in terms of, I'm booking 6K intensives that weekend in Vegas. Maybe it was 2.5, maybe it was 2.5K or something like that. And the program that I did, that was the 9-month program, was like $7,000. Lots of money, right? But if you look at how many intensives I've booked at that 6K price tag, which is, I think I counted 30 maybe, like obviously that investment has paid itself back many times over. And it's because of that collegiality, that group cohort model. It's just so valuable. Like you can't put a price point on that, but you need someone creating that frame and that container, which is what my group does, to allow that to happen. It doesn't just kind of organically happen on its own. You need accountability, you need scheduling, you need a framework that you're all working on together to create that kind of synergy. And that's what my group does. So yeah, I worked on my money mindset stuff a lot, but so much of it had to do with that group container and that surrounding myself, and also surrounding myself like on social media, in terms of podcasts I listen to, all that stuff. Like the media that I consume is very much full of people doing things like that. So that also, I have that in my ears all the time. And, that is so influential in terms of my mindset, right? Milestone number 3, I think, was investing in myself and in my business. And I said, those group programs were one, but like just realizing the importance of continuing to invest, right? For me, it was hiring a one-to-one coach who I've worked with for 2 years now. None of what I'm doing now, the podcast, the group coaching programs, individual coaching, how I show up on social media, all of the forms and resources and documents and freebies I've created, none of that would have happened without the right coaching. And that is another investment. But again, it's that investment that pays out big time. Because what I've been able to do, I created an email list, which felt so daunting to me. Like all these things that I didn't know how to do. I didn't even know that they were important. I needed to invest in coaching that was going to lead me along that path. And someone who has done what I've done and has done it successfully could help me, along the way, can read every email I send to my list to make sure that it's doing what it needs to do, can help me troubleshoot issues with my hosting platform because she also uses the same one. Just stuff like that. The amount of time and energy that I save by not just banging my head against the wall because I have someone laying a template for me that's worked for her. And obviously I tweak things as needed, but just like we all need to have some trust that what we're being told to do is going to work. And so you want the person guiding you to have proof of that. But you also need someone guiding you. Like, can you do all this on your own? Sure. Will it take you longer and be more frustrating? Almost definitely. So, especially now where intensives are getting more popular and there is more competition, I think you need to be figuring out how to stand out, and having outside eyes on your business is a great way to help you do that, because we're so laser focused on our own business. Sometimes we need someone to say, whoa, I can step back and look at the big picture and say, here's things that need tweaking. Here's what you're doing well. Let's look at some data. What's the kind of data you can look at? Like, I didn't even know that stuff. And that's what investing in my business gave me, is getting support from someone who could do that. And the other investments I've made in my business, which matters so much, and I think I've talked about these in other episodes, I have a podcast editor and she writes my show notes. Thank God I don't do that. She makes sure the podcast is uploaded in all the right places and all the links are where they're supposed to be. All that stuff I don't want to spend time and energy doing, and I wouldn't do as well. That's covered. I have someone who does my social media stuff for me and does all of my setting things up in Kit and helping it all look good and branding and all that stuff. I don't do any of that, thank God. Writes my captions for me on social media, works on my website. Again, that's an investment, but it's time. Does my ads for me on Instagram. I don't do that stuff because I don't have the time to do it. And the time that I would spend doing it would probably take me 4 times as long because I'd get frustrated. I'd make mistakes. I don't want to do any of that. I have an accountant, a good accountant, so I'm not screwing up my finances, which I would definitely do if I didn't have one. So, all those are investments in my business. I've invested in an office because I really like offering an in-person intensive. I think that does set me apart in some ways as well. I invest in the things that make my office feel cozy and welcoming and, elevated as an experience, right? I've invested a ton in a podcast strategist who has helped me set up the podcast. She helps me tweak my strategy, come up with episode ideas. Those things, I think often when we're doing something, other people can say, oh, she makes it look easy or it must not be that hard. It is hard and it's a ton of work and it's a ton of commitment. That's the other thing, showing up day after day after day on social media, on a podcast or whatever. It's easy to let that slide if you don't have people that you've invested in who are expecting you to be doing that stuff, to be showing up. I record my podcast every week because I'm paying a podcast editor to edit an episode every week. So if I don't get an episode up, I'm losing money. And this person who is waiting for my content can't do their job. I pay a retainer to the person who does all my social media, branding, makes everything look good. I want to be giving them stuff to do all the time so that I'm getting my money's worth out of that retainer. And they do a great job. But that also keeps me accountable, having that investment. My coach who has you're supposed to be doing this week and this that week and this by this date. I need homework assignments, man. I'm a student. Give me homework that I can do, But those investments actually make things happen, right? I know I wouldn't be at 100 episodes of my podcast without all those people that I just mentioned, because I wouldn't have the supports in place to make it possible. And I wouldn't have the accountability people being well, where's that thing you're going to send me? Right. So investing in myself and my business was a huge milestone. And when it comes to fee setting, right, that's all stuff that gets figured in, right? I need money coming in so I can pay this other money. I need enough money coming in that the money I'm paying is worth it, right? So that all goes into feeling confident about the fee you're setting, working through that money mindset stuff, because this is what you actually need to be charging for so many reasons. Milestone number 4 was just, as I was going through this journey, what do I want my intensives to look like? Fee setting, getting through all that mindset stuff. What are the clinical skills I need? How do I market it? Getting support and figuring all that stuff out. I was wait. I've accumulated a ton of knowledge here and I'm getting great results with clients. And I know where there are gaps in the programs that I did, right? I was talking about them before. I want to support I can be the one. I have an idea for a program that's different. That's not just marketing and business stuff. That's not just clinical skills, that brings them both together. That's not just one-on-one, that has the group element. And I do offer one-to-one coaching, which a lot of people use and find very valuable for a variety of reasons. And there still is the accountability built in because I'm that person. But there are a lot of people for whom the idea of the cohort brings in all those elements that they really need. So, how do I start getting involved in coaching? People always want to know that. How did you build a coaching business? I would say that first thing for me was seeing that other people were doing it. Even knowing it was a possibility, and I think also getting over my mindset stuff initially, that it was some sort of grift or that people were just trying to make a quick buck. Let me tell you, a coaching business that's sustainable, that makes money, is not a quick buck. It is the long game. Hello, I'm on my 100th episode of the podcast. It is not something that you can just dabble. I post on social media almost every day, And I've been doing that for 2 years plus. More or less, yeah. but in the last year, certainly every day. Like, no matter what else is going on in my life, I get a podcast episode out. I post my reel on social media. I'm consistent with my email list. Like, I don't let myself have a lot of excuses. There have been times, like, if you've listened to the podcast for a long time, like the month that we had moved and my daughter was really struggling with school, I missed an episode in there, I think. The month of the election this year, I think I missed 2. But beyond that, if I'm at 100 episodes in 2 years, that's 50 episodes a year. So I haven't been missing a lot of weeks. And my life was crazy. Last summer, I moved 7 hours away, 4 states away, my family of 5, from a state we lived in for 15 years. Like, last summer was a shit show. This fall was a shit show. Finally, we've gotten good childcare. The kids are settled. Things have calmed a lot. But my oldest daughter is autistic. This move was a huge transition. And I made the commitment, I will get the podcast out and I will stay active on social media. And I launched my group for the first time in September of 2024, even though my life was falling apart outside of that. I mean, obviously, it was hard. It was not falling apart, but things were really chaotic. It was not ideal. And that's something else I've learned too. And that I try to stress with therapists I'm working with is like, there's never going to be a perfect time for things. Yes, maybe I wouldn't suggest trying to start offering intensives when you're 2 weeks postpartum or even 3 months postpartum, although people do. But I'm not saying you should. I'm just saying people do. But like, really, there is never a perfect time. There's always going to be a reason why starting intensive doesn't feel ideal to you. But the longer you wait, right? And I just think that I'm proof positive of that, like, you can get through difficult seasons of life and stay consistent with the things that you've decided that mattered. So how did I start? I'm getting off track a little. All the points are kind of blending into each other. But so I wanted to support other therapists, right? And this is about 2 years ago. So I started talking about this. I really started my Future Template Parent Instagram account. I think it was March of 2023. That's when I came up with the name, with the idea of like, I'm a parent. Intensives have been life-changing for me as a parent and business owner and for my clients, all those things. And I knew a lot of other parents who were also struggling to balance an EMDR caseload with being a parent in a world that is a lot to show up in every day. And so, and I love the idea of creating the future template for your life as a parent and as a business owner, as I say in the intro to the podcast every week. I think I always talk fast, but I think I'm on like super speed this morning, and here's why. Slight divergence. My husband and I are actually away for 2 nights right now for the first time in a very long time, since we moved, I think. And I got a full night's sleep without any kids in my bed. I woke up on my own at 7:30, had 2 cups of coffee. I'm like so energized. We're going to go on a bike ride along Lake Champlain momentarily. But yeah, my energy is even higher than it is sometimes. So it's a combination of good sleep, coffee, and being away from my children. But anyway, I digress. So March of 2023, I came up with the Future Template Parent Podcast name for my Instagram. I started thinking about it for the podcast too. That was about when I was like, oh, I should do a podcast to really promote if I want to do business coaching. Because I love listening to podcasts. I listen to so many therapy, practice, growth podcasts and I felt like my lens was very niche down, but it was unique, right? It was super niche, right? Like this is like, a private practice building podcast can appeal to all therapists. An EMDR intensive podcast appeals to therapists who do EMDR who want to start intensives, right? So niche. And yet there's lots of you listening. So that number continues to grow. So I know it's, hitting home for a lot of people. And I knew it was a podcast that I would have wanted to listen to. So, that helps, right? It's like if it's information that I knew I would find valuable, I'm like, I'm sure there are other people like me out there. And I talk to a lot of people who are like, oh, this is cool. So, um, so right, Future Template Parent Instagram page and thinking about the podcast. And so I started talking about the coaching on Instagram. And at the same time, I was kind of working on the beginning steps to get the podcast going. And so I was like teasing that a little bit, but my Instagram following was tiny then, like maybe 100 people or something. But that started to grow too. And then May 31st, like I said, the trailer launched, like the trailer for the podcast came out. The next week I had 3 episodes that dropped at once. My first coaching client I got that month, the month that I started the podcast. I coached a few therapists in the one-to-one model, which helped me figure out exactly what people actually needed to get to launching intensives. I still do the one-to-one model. And I still like doing that. So if that's of interest to you, absolutely reach out to me. I have a bunch of options for how to work together. We can figure out what is the best for you. But it helped me figure out how did I like to work? How did I like to offer that one-to-one approach? What additional skills I needed to be able to share with people. So those one-to-one initial coaching relationships helped me think like, oh, I should get a training on IFS informed EMDR. People really want to know about that. Great. So that improved my clinical skills and made my coaching more marketable. I worked on my money mindset for what I wanted to charge for the coaching, which is a whole other money mindset thing. And also like finding the right price point because coaching and therapy are different. And then I started thinking about how a group offering could be really great. And so I started working with my business coach on building that while continuing to maintain the one-to-one. And my first cohort of the group is September of 2024. Okay, so if you think about, March 2023, I sort of started Future Template Parent. I think I filed the LLC in May of 2023 and then did one-to-one coaching under that. And then September of 2024, I launched the first cohort. I should talk I'm going to do another episode later on about launching a group or any kind of big offer, coaching offer, and what that entails, because I know a lot of you are interested in that. Just going to say right now, it's a lot of work. And it's a lot of work that you don't get return on investment until if and when people sign up. I've lost money on launches before, but I'll talk about that at another time. So that's kind of milestone 4 was like, I want to start a second business supporting other therapists. It's not just about my own intensive practice anymore. And that's why I was so glad I was already working with a coach. Like we'd already started. I kind of knew that I wanted to do this, which is why I initially reached out to her, but I hadn't started Future Template Parent officially until after we've been working together for a couple of months. So she's been with me the whole way crafting this other business, which I can't even tell you how helpful it's been to have that support basically from the ground up. And then milestone 5 was starting and sticking with the podcast, right? Like I've said already, like the consistency I committed to, no matter what, this podcast was going to get out pretty much every week. Why did I do it? Like I said, I love podcasts. I love listening to podcasts. I learn a ton from podcasts. I feel like they're a medium that just is so easy to connect with people through. I had spent hours and hours and hours and hours on runs, on walks, on car drives, while cleaning, listening to practice building podcasts. And I thought, why not me? There was also some mindset stuff there, but what helped me so much was I was listening to another therapist podcast, Danielle Swim's Entrepreneurial Therapist podcast, which a lot of you probably know. And she interviewed her podcast strategist person, an editor. And I listened to that interview and I started listening to the podcast strategist podcast because of course she has her own podcast about launching and growing a podcast. And I thought, why don't I just I've been thinking about this podcast idea for a while. This was like, I don't know. It was before I'd come up with a Future Template Parent idea. But I was getting, I don't know. It's like, obviously you hear me. I love to talk. I love to teach. It's like, this is kind of a natural medium for me. So I reached, and I had kind of an idea about what I wanted for a podcast. I reached out to, her name is Rosemary Callender. Shout out to Rosemary, the Evergreen podcast strategist. I'll put her stuff in the show notes for any of you who are interested in a podcast. And I worked with her. Actually, I got the idea for calling my initial one-to-one coaching container a VIP day, because that's what she called her like podcast launch package. It was a VIP day. And now I've kind of shifted more towards calling them intensives, because obviously, like, it's a coaching intensive, I'm teaching intensive, but that idea of the VIP day where it's like all the attention's focused on you, you learn everything you need to know to get the podcast up and running. And for me, it was to get your intensives up and running. So that's how I started. And it was great because I still use so many of the tools that she gave me in that first, I think we met in April of 2023 for our VIP day. Yeah, because I launched the podcast end of May. I still use a ton of the tools and strategy pieces. Like I'm looking at it right now, the episode planner that she gave me for how to craft every episode. I still use it. I'm using it right now as my outline for how to structure each episode. Her strategy and planning documents I still use. So anyway, that's how I started it. And I loved her kind of approach was, she helped me with the cover art. She helped me with finding the music. She helped me with, how do you promote it on social if that's what you want to do. And all the tech stuff that I was worried about, she helped me navigate that really easily. And she has this framework of like, create a bunch of bingeable, like several episodes at once, so that it's not just, so one, because it gets you into the habit of creating episodes, gets your like creativity flowing. And two, if people like the first episode they hear, they can then listen to like 3 and get a lot of your voice in their ear, and then hopefully get them hooked so that they are like subscribing, they're listening, or, it's fun. I love the podcast. I love interviewing people. I love researching topics to talk about on my own. I love the dedication and the practice of like thinking every week, how am I going to craft a message that appeals to my audience? I love to teach, so it's very natural for me to want to talk. So that's why it's fun for me. And also it's fun because I get a ton of positive feedback from people saying how much it's helped them. And of course, that's so motivating. That's the whole idea. And it's been helpful for me. So many of my coaching clients that have come to me because of the podcast. Like maybe they also follow me on social media, but there aren't that many people. There are a couple for sure, a handful, who I have coached who've never heard an episode of the podcast. The vast majority of coaching clients I've gotten listen to the podcast or have listened to it. So it's great. It's a huge, the return on investment there is huge, but it is an investment. Like I said, I pay an editor, I paid a strategist. Just the time that I take to come up with the podcast episodes, to craft them, to edit the social media stuff that I have to, even though I have someone who creates it for me. I need to look at it. I need to post it. I need to, all that stuff. That's time, right? And our time, if I'm doing a 6K intensive, it's about $350 an hour, $375. That's kind of how much I think of as my time being worth right now. So, I want some return on investment for this. It is time, it is energy, it is creativity. I've come up with 100 different podcast episode ideas. That's a lot. And the consistency piece, like I told you guys, I stuck with it no matter what. And that was really hard. It's still hard sometimes. I can still hit Wednesday of a week and be like, oh my gosh, what am I going to talk about next week? And I'm working on that with my strategist about being much more planful and having a plan for the year and all that stuff. But I will say also, it was okay that I haven't had that these first couple of years. And I've gotten more, I've become more planful, with my episodes the longer I've been doing this. And now I'm like, okay, I've done this for 2 years. Let me really step in and do that even more intentionally, right? With even more focus and with even more attention to what are my goals for the podcast over the course of the year? What am I trying to promote in a given season? How are my episodes supporting that, right? How do I mix clinical with business, with interviews, with one, just me talking, like all that stuff, right? And what else could I say about the podcast? Well, where do I want it to go? I want it to continue to grow. I am not planning on giving up on it anytime soon or at all. I mean, at some point I'm sure I'll stop, but I have no plans of doing that. I I remember thinking like, wow, if I make it to 50 episodes, that will be amazing. And maybe I'll stop. Well, obviously that didn't happen. And I think I told myself that because I was like, well, that will be a year. And then it was a goal that I set for myself. I'm like, you can make it to 50. But as my podcast strategist said to me, if you make it to 50, you can make it to 100. And she's right. And I have, like most podcasts, I think fail, like don't get to 10 episodes. Like over, like, I don't even know, like a really high percentage of podcasts do not get to 10 episodes. It might even be like 90% or something. It's like really high. So there is something about the routine and like certainly the validation you get from seeing the numbers rise and people listening. That helps a lot. But what's next? I want to continue. I think I do want to start talking some more about some of the like other business things that I do, like about launching things, about what it's like to be a coach, about marketing strategies for coaching versus intensives, always tying it back to intensives because there's always a lesson I think that can work for both. But I know that when I listen to therapy podcasts, I love hearing kind of the inside the business sort of stories, right? So I think people want some of that, but that's not going to become everything. I think I'm just going to have a little bit more of that than I've had. Really working on getting on more guests. I'm interested in trying to get on other people's podcasts more. That's a big goal for me for this year. And also like literally monetizing the podcast with ads. And I'm excited to say, and not ads, like, like the ads on therapy podcasts are not crazy there, but that is a way for me to get some of my costs covered. And the podcast, because of my consistency, because of my growing audience, I'm actually appealing as, someone to have an ad for certain products on my podcast. So that's exciting. And that isn't really something I ever thought about at all, honestly. I thought of my podcast as a revenue generator, simply because it was funneling people into coaching. But now, because podcasts are a medium that's consumed by so many people, it is a place that a lot of companies want to be putting ads, especially because often, a niche podcast means that the ads are going directly to their ideal audience too. The audience is already there for their product, And of course, these would only be things that I also use, that I get behind. I'm not going to just put something up there that doesn't matter to me or that I can't get behind. No, Schmetter Schmelp ads here, obviously. Not that they'd want me, but you know what I mean. So all that to say, that's just some thoughts for the future. And then just continuing to get the word out there about intensives and continuing to stay consistent because I have seen the value of that. And I have seen how it is a trajectory, right? And that it builds on itself. So here's to getting to 200 episodes. I am putting that out there. I'm going to get to 200 episodes and it'll be exciting to do another one of these look backs at 200. Maybe I'll listen to this one again and sort of say like, oh, this is what I was talking about 2 years ago. Here's where I am now when I get to 200 episodes. And, I hope to take you guys all along for the ride with me. I did just want to put in one last little plug for the EMDR Intensive 12-week intensive June cohort. Link is in the bio if you want to know more, even if you want to schedule a consult call with me. The last day of the launch is May 29th, which is tomorrow, I believe. You can still enroll after that, but the price will go up. So if you want to get the launch pricing, really you want to be signing up by the end of the day on Thursday, the 29th. We have such a cool group of therapists from across the country, even across the world. We have someone from Iceland joining us. So I would just love for you to be part of that experience and all the stuff I've been talking about could be part of your journey too. Hey, maybe you want to start a podcast. If you wanted to be in the group and pick my brain about that, you could. But I would just, and investing in your business. I know this is an investment that will reap rewards for you, the group. I have therapists to prove it. And I just, you invest $2,500 in the group and you book a 6K intensive, talk about it paying for itself more than twice over. So don't miss one of those last spots. I really would love to have you in the group. So there you have it. My 100th episode about 5 milestones in my business. over the past 2 years of the podcast and a little before. Reach out to me if you have any questions about working with me, whether in this group or in a one-to-one capacity. In the show notes, I'll also put my link to my consult call. I'm excited to give you all some updates on the group as it's going. I'll certainly have podcast episodes talking about the group as it goes along in the next few months. Thank you all for listening, today and over the past 2 years. I am just so thrilled at what this podcast has grown into, and I'm excited to see what it will be in the future. Take good care, everyone. Talk to you soon. Bye.